All right, so we're now finally into Leviticus chapter 13. Leviticus chapter 13 and 14 is important sections in the Leviticus. As you look at the chapter, starting from chapter 13 through 14, and look how many pages are there. They're quite a lot, right? So it's pretty long chapters, right, compared to others. You know, other chapters are much shorter than this, but this chapter 13 and 14 is somewhat long compared to others. The question is, why? And what is this about? This chapter 13 and 14 is about leprosy. So when I was actually reading the scriptures before without understanding what it really means, I was just a little puzzled. It's like, okay, so what do I need to learn about leprosy? Is that going to really help me to understand Jesus? Is that going to help me to understand the salvation? Is that going to really help me to understand the scripture more? But as I started to understand what it really means, it really touched me deeply. It really touched me deeply when I was reading this, and this is one of the chapters that really the feelings of how God really loves us and what it means to actually understand the Jesus, his blood and his cross. And it was very, very strong message for me. So I want you to just follow me, and I want you to just kind of like look through it, and I'll try my best to just explain what it really means, and I hope it touch your heart as much as it touched my heart when I was reading this verse. So let's just read through Leviticus chapter 13. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, and saying, when a person has on the skin of his body a swelling of an eruption or a spot, and it turns into a case of leprosy, disease on the skin of his body, then he shall be brought to Aaron and priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. The priest shall examine the disease area on the skin of his body, and if the hair in the disease area has turned white and disease appear to be deeper than the skins of his body, it is case of a leprous disease. When the priest has examined him, he shall pronounce him unclean. But if the spot in white in the skin of his body and appears no deeper than the skins, and the hair in it has not turned white, the priest shall shut up the diseased person for 7 days, and the priest shall examine him on the 7th day. And if in his eyes the disease is checked, and the disease has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up for another 7 days, and the priest shall examine him again on the 7th day. And if the disease area has faded and disease has not spread in the skins, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. If it is only an eruption, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the eruption spreads in the skins, after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleaning, he shall appear again before the priest. And the priest shall look and if the eruption has a spread in the skins, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous disease. When a man is afflicted with leprous disease, he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall look. And if there is a white swelling in the skin that has turned the hair white, and there is a raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic leprous disease in the skins of his body, and priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if the leprous disease breaks out in the skins, so that the leprous disease covers all the skins of the diseased person from head to foot, as far as the priest can see, then the priest shall look, and if the leprous disease has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him clean of the disease. It has all turned white, and he is clean. But when raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall examine the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean, for it is a leprous disease. But if the raw flesh recovers and turns white again, then he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall examine him. And if the disease has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce the diseased person clean. He is clean. If there is a skin of one body's boil, and if it heals, and the place of the boil there comes a white swelling or the reddish white spot, then it shall be shown to the priest, and the priest shall look, and if it appears deeper than the skins, and the hair has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a case of leprous disease that has broken out in the boil, but if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in it, and it is deeper than the skins, but has faded, and the priest shall shut him up 7 days, and if it spreads in the skins, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is disease. But if the spot remains in one place and does not spread, it is scar of the boils, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. So, up to this point. So, I'm going to ask you this. When we read this particular sections of the Bible, okay, so it's a law, and God is actually telling Moses and the Israelites what to do when there is a problem, especially when they have a leprous disease appeared in his body. But I want you to kind of detach from the Bible for a second, and then I want you to think, do you think back then, do you think there was a doctor exist? No? There's nobody is actually curing anything? Yeah. Like some kind of herb that they use as some sort of way to really cure people, right, in different ways. And imagine, if not Israelites, what about the in Egypt, when there's pharaohs and high officials? Do you think they have some sort of people who actually take care of or making medicines or treating some people? Do you think that some kind of those people existed at that time, you think? Yeah. Imagine, how would actually they made the mummy, after people die, right? They put stuff in and they try to just so they do all kinds of things to not a proper way, not like today's, but back then there was some way that they're actually treating people in some kind of disease, because disease existed, as the human existed. So there was always some sort of like process to cure people. So it is not officially doctor, but there's some sort of people who are actually treating other people. Now the question here is, for specifically leprosy, there's some other disease, and there's other kinds of, disease existed at that time, right? Boil is one, and there's some sort of like, all kinds of, the rashes, or like, all kinds of stuff that probably, was there before. But why priest is the one who's examined the leprosy? Is a priest acting as a doctor to really diagnose someone? What about other disease? Are there actually examined other, disease as well? It seems like that this leprosy is the only specific disease that priest examines. And, determine whether this person is, a clean or unclean. They're acting like a doctor, right? Remember when Moses was in Egypt, and when the plague came down in Egypt, they suffered it, from all kinds of disaster, right? So there must be a people who's treating those people at the time. So there must be some people curing others. But why leprosy is different than any other disease? Especially in Leviticus, the Bible spend pages, good portions of the Leviticus in explaining about this leprosy. Why is that so important? Is that because this is critically important for Israel to treat this than any other disease? I don't think so. But specifically, this leprosy is just covers what the priest should do to examine the person. And if the priest is not trained to really treat other people, examine, their issues, there must be some reason why God is telling the priest should do this, not the others. So, one way or another, God is telling the priest to examine the leper's disease. And let's take a look at a few things here. So, how do they actually determine this leprosy? So, few things. This leprosy in Hebrew word zarat is not really only limited to leprosy. It's about a lot of more broader terms of a skin disease, including the leprous disease. So zarat is just like broadly used for leprosy plus other skin disease. And it's not about how to medically examine the lepers, but there's some different things that God is trying to teach us. So how did they actually think of the leprosy at the time? when you look, Miriam, when Miriam was actually, came to Moses and talked about his the woman's from Goose, and he complained that why are you getting married to a pagan, and when he complained with Aaron, Miriam got lepers for 7 days, and then she was cured and she brought back into the camp. So the lepers was just treated as a somewhat the punishment of God, sort of. But this leprosy is a little bit different than other disease, because I don't know, have you ever seen the person who has a leprosy? Have you ever seen? No? Yeah, I will show you. I'll show you. All right. Okay. So we'll talk after you're done. All right. So yeah. So when you actually have a leprosy, it just, the parts of our body just falls off. It's like a melting, and it just, when it falls off, it's not just the hands, but their face and their, especially like their fingers, and their face, nose, it's just, it's a melting. It just comes right off. But the issue here is, when something that comes off, let's say if we get cut, we feel the pain. But they don't feel the pain when something comes right, if the finger just comes right off, they don't feel the pain. Do you understand? It's not like we're feeling like this. It just, the whole finger starts to like turn and cut off. Like this is a very typical things of a leper, because just like toes just comes off. Yeah, like this. Yeah. Yeah. So like this, you see he doesn't have a finger, and then same thing with their nose, like something like this. It's just, it become like, really bad. So when you look at the people who has the lepers, their teeth comes off, their nose comes off. It just completely destroys the forms of their body. Imagine, there are more pictures that I could show, but it's just too nasty that I just don't want to show that kind of picture. But it is really, it's like a deform your body and shapes. It's just really bad. And imagine if you have those kind of disease, right? And how would people see you when you actually have this kind of disease? Will people that will come to you, you think? The friends that you used to have, coworker that you used to work with, do you think they will come to you? No. Yeah, they will not come to you. They will just, they don't want to be associated with you at all. And imagine, loneliness and being separated from the society. It just spiritually kills the person and physically kills that person. Imagine watching yourself kind of like deforming, it's changing of your body. It's really painful experience. Right? And I want you to see this as, like, put yourself in their shoes. Instead of, thinking as, somebody else that I don't know. I don't want you to think of it as just third person, seeing the pictures of someone that I don't know. And one day you're actually looking at you're looking yourself against the mirror, then you see yourself as deforming. It's just horrible experience that you will have. And I want you to feel that, because until you feel this, you will not understand what this chapter 13 and 14 is about. So I want you to try to feel, what would I feel and how would I actually, feel if I get this disease. And if you're the one who's actually standing in front of priest and being examined, would you be scared? Yeah, you start to see some spots on your your body, and then you brought to priest to be examined for 7 days, and he's just checking your fingers and your hands and your arms and your legs and your foot. And when the priest is checking, you feel very, very uncomfortable, like scared. Then you hope that priest will tell me that, this is nothing, it is not a leprosy, right? For that 7 days, you'll be like so scared as the priests keep checking. But one thing that you have to understand is, priest is checking for 7 days, right? So it's not something he checks and says, I think you're a leprosy. It's not something they quickly determine that you're a disease. They have to check for 7 days, examine very, very carefully. They don't just say, you're leprosy, because based on what they claim, the result of the examination could determine how you will live, right, after that diagnosis. Because once you determine as the leprous disease, you will no longer be able to actually live with your family. You have to be separated off from the people. You no longer have any association with the people that you used to associate with. Your lifestyle will completely change from that day on. So imagine, how would you feel? You definitely don't want to be diagnosed as a leprous disease. And I want you to feel, how they would feel if this actually disease, came to me. So, coming back to chapter 13 and verse 2, when a person has on the skin of his body a swelling or an eruption or a spot, it turns into a case of leprous disease on the skin of his body, then he shall be brought to Aaron, the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. So he has to be brought to the priest. And the priest shall examine the disease area on the skins of his body, and if the hair in the disease area has turned white, and disease appeared to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is case of a leprous disease. When the priest has examine them, he shall pronounce him unclean. So for those 7 days, he's very scared what he would say. Because whatever he says will determine my life. It's not what I say. I can't say, well, wait, hold on. This is not lepers. I cannot say that. I cannot examine myself. It has to be examined by priest. It's not in my control. But if the spot is white in the skin of his body and appears no deeper than the skin and the hair, and it has not turned to white, the priest shall shut up the diseased person for 7 days. Now, it's kind of like suspicious, but the priest is not sure whether this person actually has a leprosy or not. So he has to separate, is to shut him up in an area where no one can really come close to him. And then, hold on, I will examine you a little further. So 7 days is not enough. So I'm going to come back and examine you for 7 more days. And the priest shall examine him on the 7th day, and if his disease is checked with the disease has not spread in the skins, then the priest shall shut him up for another 7 days. And the priest shall examine him again on the 7th day. And if the disease area has faded and disease has not spread in the skins, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only an eruption. Imagine, for after 7 days and another 7 days, which is 14 days, it will be really scary, right? I want you to go back. Something interesting, though. When we were learning about the childbirth and purification last week, about when a mother delivers a baby, when it was a boy, and how long the mother is unclean? 7 days. If they deliver a boy, it's 14 days. Yeah. I'm sorry, it was a girl. Sorry, not boy. If it is a girl, it's 14 days. The boy for 7 days, girl for 14 days. Here, 7 days, another 7 days, 14 days. Right? It's repeating. It's about unclean. Right? So, they examine this for another 7 days. If it does not spread any longer, then they may claim it as you're clean. But, verse 7, if the eruption spreads in the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall appear again before the priest, and the priest shall look, and if the eruption has spread in the skins, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous disease. So they're examine the persons very, very carefully. They don't jump to the gun, making sure, just check, double check, triple check, and quadruple check, making sure they're diagnosing this person's very, very carefully. They don't just quick to jump to the conclusion at all. In verse 9, when a man is afflicted with the leprous disease, it shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall look, and if there is a white swelling in the skin and has turned the hair white, and there is a raw flesh in the swelling, it is chronic leprous disease in the skin of his body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. So, what is unclean? When do they actually determine is unclean? So if it's chronic, but what makes them chronic? White swelling, white hair, and raw flesh. So what is a raw flesh, by the way? So this raw flesh, in Hebrew word, flesh is basar. Basar means flesh. Hay is raw, and baset is the swelling. So basar hay baset is the raw flesh and swelling is what it means. But this baset, the word is swelling, word is a little bit interesting word, because this baset is coming from the word set. Set, the original root of this word coming from nasa. The word nasa means exaltation, dignity, uprising, and it's like exaltation. So imagine this leprosy represents sin. It is a sin. But it is raw flesh swelling means it's like the inner sins that we have is uprising, where it's exalting. It's like we're just showing off and it's like, I'm the best. I'm actually enjoying all this. They don't see their issues and their sins at all. They're very proud of all the things that we're doing, exulting of what we're doing. I'm very proud of what I'm doing here. I'm enjoying this. When you have this basar, ya baset, it's like the raw flesh is just to continue to grow, showing it off. Then you are leprosy. You're leprosy. But that's even more interesting after that. So there is area where it's getting turned white, right? White is very clean, right? It is clean. Remember I mentioned leprosy is it's like something turning to white, right? So white was actually the word righteousness, as we learned from Exodus, right? But it's like we're showing off our own righteousness. We're just like showing off our righteousness. Although it is not a righteous act, but we are showing off it as righteous acts. I've done this. I help other people. I'm a good person. We're just like showing ourselves up and saying, well, I'm different than others. The Christians are like this, but, I'm better than Christians because, I'm giving myself up. I'm helping other people, right? I care for others, right? I'm doing all these good things. And other people may say, like, if this person is not going to heaven, who else is going to go to heaven? Right? We always see our righteous acts as good things. But does that our righteous act that they were performing make us clean or make us a righteous person? No, not by God's standard. For our standard, yes. But human standard, yes, but not by God's standard. God does not care how righteous you are, what you did. That does not make you a clean person at all. But interesting part is, coming back to the verse, verse 12, and if the leprous disease breaks out in the skin so that the leprous disease covers all the skins of the diseased person from head to foot, so far as the priest can see, then the priest shall look, and if the leprous disease has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him clean of the disease. It has all turned white, and he is clean. It's like, what? Wait a second. It's like, right? So it's like very odd. Like, what do you mean? It's like all this white spots are coming up, and then spots coming out that you're unclean, but everything turned to be white. Then you're clean. It's like, what does that mean? It can't be just a part of it, right? It has to be just completely turned from head to toe. It has to be white, right? But when you think of it, there are people, so partially their skin turns into white, right? Right. So whether it's like black or Asians or whoever they are, like their skins just turn to white. But if they're actually partially, changed, it looks bad. But what if they're completely just the whole color changed, head to toe, like everything changed? Then you won't notice because everything turned white, right? All right, so what it means is when everything is turned white, that means everything what was inside came out. Nothing inside is remaining, is uprising. Everything just came out. There's nothing is there to come out anymore. So when the spots are, appearing here, there, that we don't know where, where other area is going to continue to grow with the spot. But everything is turned to white from the head to toe. There's nothing more to come out anymore. You just turn it completely white. And because everything came out, there's nothing more to come out. So inside is no longer, there's bad things growing because everything came out already. So when there is a sins, like spreads, here, there, and as a spot, there's an issue. But if we completely turned white, all our sins came out. Ourself just completely revealed. Nothing more to hide. When we have a lot more sins, inside, we're trying to hide it, we cover up, and we just make, lies everywhere. So we just try to cover up more because there are more things we're hiding. But if everything just revealed and everything is just uncovered, there's nothing more to hide. There's nothing to really lie about because everything came out already, right? There's nothing I'm holding back. There's nothing to lie about. Our sins completely just turned out. There's nothing more to hide. For those of the people, what happened? There are more chance for them to realize, I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. My whole body is covered with sins. I realize that there is nothing good in me. I'm a complete sinner. You realize that I don't have anything good in me. So they realize I'm a complete sinner. Head to toe. When you realize you're a complete sinner, you're clean. And then, let's see what they have to do. If it happens with the boil, same thing. They have to go through the same process. In verse 24, or when the body has a burn on its skins and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a spot, a reddish white or white, the priest shall examine it, and if the hair in the spot has turned white and appears deeper than the skins, then it is a leprous disease. It has broken out in the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is case of a leprous disease. But if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in the spot, and it is no deeper than the skins, but has faded, the priest shall shut him up 7 days, and the priest shall examine him the seventh day. If it is spreading in the skins, then the priest shall pronounce he's unclean. It is a case of a leprous disease, but if the spot remains in one place and does not spread in the skins, but has faded, it is dwelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar of the burn. Verse 29, when a man and woman has disease on the head or a beard, the priest shall examine the disease, and if it is deeper than the skins, then the hair in it is yellow and thin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an itch and leprous disease of the head or the beard. If the priest examines the itching disease and appears no deeper than the skins, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up and person with the itching disease for 7 days, and on the seventh day the priest shall examine the disease. If the itch has not spread, and there is no yellow hair, the itch appears to be no deeper than the skins, then he shall shave himself, but the itch he shall not shave. And the priest shall shut up the person with the itching disease for another 7 days. And on the seventh day the priest shall examine the itch, and if the itch has not spread in the skins and appears to be no deeper than the skins, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. And he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the itch spread in the skins after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine them, and if the itch has spread in the skins, the priest needs not seek for the yellow hair, he is unclean. But if in his eyes the itch is unchanged and black hair has grown in it, the itch is healed and he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or woman has a spot on the skins of the body, white spots, the priest shall look, and if the spot on the skin of the body are of dull white, and it is leukoderma that has broken out and the skins, he is clean. If a man's hair falls out from his head and is bald, he is clean. And if the man's hairs falls out from his forehead, he is baldness of the forehead, he is clean. But if there is on the bald head or the bald forehead of a reddish white diseased area, it is a leprous disease breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. Then the priest shall examine them. If the disease of swelling is reddish white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, like the appearance of a leprous disease in the skins on the body, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest must pronounce him unclean. His disease is on his head. The leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes, and let the hair of his head hang loose, and he shall cover his upper lips, and cry out, unclean, unclean. He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. So, when the person is diagnosed as a leprosy, from that day on, now their life changed completely upside down. Now, they have to torn their clothes, and then they have to keep their hairs loose, and they have, when they come close to people, they have to say unclean, unclean. Why are they doing this? Yeah, avoid and getting them away, but you're claiming You are unclean, so don't come close to me. It's the word tameh. Tameh means I'm unclean. So tameh, get away from me. Don't come close to me because I am a leprosy. And then they have to be separated off from the camp. And they have to live alone. Imagine. From that day on, you no longer have anyone else to protecting you or help you. You have to help yourself. Nobody will come to you. You have to live alone. I mean, not only you're just like, diagnosed as a leprosy, but people don't come to you. Now you have to help yourself. You have to live alone. How sad life is that? It'll be pretty bad, right? From that day on, your life completely changed. Day and night. And as I shown you the picture, when you actually have that leprosy, not only your fingers and your toes, come off, your nose come off, and your body is no longer the same as what it used to be. Your body will turn like monster. It's not normal person. Verse 47, when there is a case of leprous disease in the garment, whether a woolen or linen garment, in warp or oof of linen or wool, or in the skins, or in anything made of skins, if the disease in greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the skins, in a warp, or the oof, or in any articles made of a skin, it is case of leprous disease, and it shall be shown to the priest, and the priest shall examine the disease and shut up that which has the disease for 7 days. Then you shall examine the disease on the seventh day. If the disease has spread in the garment, in the warp, or the woof, or in the skins, whatever be the use of the skins, the disease is a persistent leprous disease. It is unclean, and he shall burn the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or the wool, or the linen, or any article made of the skins that is disease, for it is persistent leprous disease. It shall be burned in the fire. Even garment, any skins that actually has that kind of similar symptom, what do you have to do with this? You have to burn it. You just burn it. Once it's burned, there's no recovery. It's completely burned. So if the leprosy represents our sins, the result of this sin is what? Be burned. Be burned. Unfortunately, we cannot throw the man into a fire like this, so we don't do that. But for skins, we just burn it. Verse 53, and if the priest examines, and if the disease has not spread in the garment, in the warp, or the woof, or in any article made of the skins, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing in which is the disease, and he shall shut it up for another 7 days, and the priest shall examine the disease things after it has been washed, and if it appears of the disease area has not changed, though the disease has not spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire, whether the rod is on the back or on the front. But if the priest examines, if the diseased area has faded after it has been washed, he shall tear it out of the garment and the skins, or the warp, or the woof. Then it appears again in the garment, in the warp of the woof, or in any article made of a skin, it is spreading, you shall burn with the fire whatever has the disease. But the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or any article made of a skins from which the disease departs, when you have washed it, shall then be washed a second time and be clean. This is the law for a case of a leprous disease in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or the woof, or any article made of a skins, to determine whether it is clean or unclean. So if it is not a human, if it is a garment, you have to burn it. They examined it carefully, for just like how they examines a man, they examines it very carefully, but if they discover that this is the lepers, they just burn it. So, result of the sin is death. The sins, the result is thrown into the burning sulfur. The sins will be burned as long as it stays there. The sin has to be cleansed. So you can think of it as, you look on the mirror, right? You should be thankful that you don't have this leprosy or leprous disease, right? You should be thankful. You don't want to see yourself with like ugly face, or you don't want to look like a monster, right? You want to be, look handsome or the pretty when you look in the mirror, right? So imagine, if we have a sins in us, and if the sins can change the shape of our body or deforms us, and then if that kind of shows as we have more sins, that changes our shape and of our body, would you look on the mirror? If our sins comes right out, that it changes our shape, no one can really look on the mirror, because none of us will look normal. Right? Thank God the sin is still inside of us, but it doesn't change us. Our shape doesn't change us. But if the sin deforms our body shape, then that's going to be disaster. So, chapter 14 is important now, because chapter 13 is about clean and unclean, lepers or non-lepers. So I'm going to ask you this: are we a lepers? Are we leprosy? Yes, we are. This is about us. This is about us in chapter 13. Now 14 is really important. So chapter 14 is when the leprous person somehow magically cured. It was healed. Somehow it was healed. But just because you're healed does not make you to become a normal person. Priest had to diagnose you that you're a leprous. You have the leprous disease. But when you are healed from leprosy, they have to diagnose again. They have to be the one who claims you that you are clean, that you can go back to the camp. So we're going to take a look. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "This shall be the law of the leprous person for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out to the camp, and the priest shall look. Then, if the case of leprous disease is healed in the leprous person, the priest shall command them to take for them who is to be cleansed to live clean birds and cedar wood, and scarlet yarn, and hyssop. And the priest shall command them to kill one of the birds in the earthenware vessel over fresh water. He shall take the live birds with the cedar wood and the scarlet yarn and the hyssop, and dip them in the live bird and the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water, and he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed of the leprous disease. Then he shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird go into the open field, and he who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and bathe himself in water, and he shall be clean. And after that he may come into the camp and live outside his tent 7 days. And on the 7th day he shall shave off all his hair from his head, his beard and eyebrow. He shall shave off all his hair. Then he shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and he shall be clean. Now, let's figure out what this means. Once again, if you're diagnosed as leprosy, you have to be separate from this camp. You have to live alone. You have to torn apart your clothes. You have to let your hair loose. You'll look bad. But now, for whatever reason, the disease does not spread any longer, and you look normal now. Everything seems to be like back to the normal. So if you're completely healed, now you don't want to stay there, right? You don't want to stay there. You want to come back to the camp, but you can't just come back to the camp because you feel, oh, I'm cured. Is no longer spreading. You can't claim yourself, I'm clean. You have to be brought to the priest and re-examined, making sure that you're clean. So they go through the same exact process what they gone through when they were diagnosed for the first time. But the question is this. The leprosy is living in the place where they're living, outside the camp. When they actually realize that they no longer have leprosy, so they have to be examined. So the priest has to examine. But think about this. Priest has to come out of the camp and have to go to this leprosy's house to examine. The leprosy do not come to the camp to be examined. That's what they did very first time. They were brought to the priest when they examined it for the first time. But when they were diagnosed as the leprosy, they no longer live in the camp anymore. They kind of like, kicked out of the camp and living outside the camp. But now when they are healed, they don't come to the priest in the camp anymore. The priest has to come outside the camp to go to the leprosy's house to examine. Imagine. Do you think the priest is really enjoying this? To going to the leprosy's house, examining this? And I want you to think about this. Did we ask for Jesus, or Jesus came to us? Did Jesus come to us? To the sinners? Yes. We didn't seek him. He came to us. Right? This priest represents who? Jesus. Who came to us, the sinners. And he carefully examines. And when priest comes, they have to go through certain process before he claims him or a claim that he's no longer leprosy and you're clean. So let's go through what process they go through. Read again. Verse 3. And the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall look then if the case of leprous disease is healed in the leprous person. The priest shall command them to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 live clean birds. So they take 2 live clean birds and cedar wood and scarlet yarn and hyssop. Right? Okay, so 2 living birds. And then what else do you need to have? Right? Where have you seen this? We have seen this in Exodus. So let's go to Exodus for a second. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 12. Let's see. Let's take a look at verse 12, 21 and on. Then Moses called all the elders of Israel and said to him, Go and select lamb for yourselves according to your clans, and kill the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it into blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out of the door of the house until the morning. Okay, so what did they use? They used the hyssop. Right? So, where else do we use the hyssop? Yeah, there's a doorpost and then Passover. Where else? So, imagine cedar wood. Where did we use the cedar wood? Cedar wood is used to build the temple. Cedar wood is always used to build the palace or temple. Cedar wood is the best wood of all, most luxurious and most the hardest, most expensive, the wood at the time. So, let's turn to 1 King, chapter 4. 1 King. First King chapter 4. Verse 29 and on. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond the measure and breadth of mind, like the sand on the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom spread the wisdom of all the people of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all other men, wiser than Ethan and Ezrahite and Herman, Calcol and Darda, and son of Mahol, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his song were 1,005. He spoke of the trees, from the cedar that is in the Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He spoke also of beasts and of birds and reptiles and of fish. So, the verse 33, he spoke of the trees from the cedar that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. What does this mean? Correct. The cedar, which is the best, to the hyssop, which is the worst. So, I want you to think about this. When this leprosy is being examined by the priest, what they're preparing is the cedar wood, and there's a hyssop, and then what do they do with that? Going back to Leviticus chapter verse 6. He shall take the live bird with the cedar wood, and the scarlet yarn and the hyssop, and deep them, and the live bird of the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. So cedar wood, hyssop, they tied them together with what? Scarlet yarn. Scarlet yarn is what? Reddish, right? Red. So, best wood, the worst the hyssop, and tie them together with the red string. What does it tell you? Correct? And then we tie them together. Correct. All right. Yeah. It's getting better. Now, there's two birds, right? There's two birds brought in, but they kill one bird. So how did they kill the one bird? So let's read. Verse 5. And the priest shall command them to kill one of the birds in an earthenware vessel over the fresh water. So how did they kill? In a pot. But what kind of pot? Correct. All right. So remember, killing one bird, but not just the killing the bird. You have to kill the bird with what? Fresh water. Right? Fresh water. And that just any fresh water? Any fresh water? Or what kind of water is this? Verse 5, pay attention. And the priest shall command them to kill one of the birds in an earthenware vessel over fresh water. It's a running water. It's a running water. Right? So it's not just, the water that you dip it in to some sort of bowl. It has to be fresh running water. Right? All right, let's think about this. So let's put this together. He brought 2 birds and killing one bird, but not just to killing the bird, but you have to kill this bird through the fresh running water. So when you kill this bird, what happened to the blood? The waters are dripping down to earthenware, which is a clay plate. Waters are dripping down to the plate at the bottom, right? This fresh running water is what? Living water. Living water. And the bird is being killed, and the blood will coming down on a clay. Clay, all right? Let's think about this. 2 Corinthians. Chapter 4. Second Corinthians chapter 4, we're going to read verse 7. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. What do we have? We have this treasure. What is this treasure? The treasure is Jesus. The treasure is Jesus in jars of clay. So we have a treasure in the jars of clay. So because we have the treasure in jars of clay, which makes it nice. So imagine you have a dish, right? But what you actually put on the dish is what makes special. Because people don't really care about the dish itself, but what you put on the dish. Because that's what you're eating. The clay is us, but the treasure is Jesus. So the bird is dying and spread the blood through the living water, coming down and drop it into the clay or the earth in the vessel. So what does that tell you? It is the death of Jesus Christ. His blood brings the living water to the clay, which is to us. And then what? Verse 7, and he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed, of the leprous disease. Then he shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living birds go into the open field. So, sprinkle with what? Seven times. What do we sprinkle? Water? Verse 6. The blood, sprinkle it 7 times. And then you proclaim, you're clean. And the other bird, they brought 2 living birds. One was killed, right? The other one is a living bird. What do they do with it? So, verse 6 and 7 again. He shall take the live bird with the cedar wood and scarlet yarn and the hyssop, and dip them and the live bird in the blood of the birds that was killed over the fresh water, and then he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed of the leprous disease. Then he shall pronounce him clean, so pronounced, and shall let the living bird go into the open field. So this living bird is dipped into the blood that was killed before, deep into the bird, and let the bird go to the open field. Remember, let's just go through the same process again. So the bird, they brought two living bird, cedar wood, hyssop with the red scarlet, the linen, and then tied them together and killed one bird from the fresh, flowing water, and killed, and all the dripping blood and the fresh water just coming down onto this clay. Dip it into the hyssop and put it on the other living bird, and sprinkle it over to the leprosy for 7 times, and you proclaim you are clean. After you claim you're clean, let the bird go open field. Death of Jesus Christ, resurrection after you proclaim. This bird now has the blood of the other bird's blood. And this bird doesn't do anything. Only thing this bird was just brought in and just dip it into the blood and just let the bird go. Do you know where this bird go? We don't know. It's open field. So, our sin is gone. We proclaimed we were clean. We no longer be the leprosy anymore. Does that make sense? It's about the death of Jesus Christ and the resurrection, and it's a salvation, and proclaiming that we are the clean, and giving us a living water. Living water represents the Holy Spirit, and it cleanses us. This process must go through. Just because your leprous disease was healed, you cannot claim yourself, I'm clean, and then you can't walk back into the camp anymore. You have to go through this process to be cleansed. And who proclaims this? The priest. Priest is the one who have to say, you are clean. Verse, huh? Yeah. Verse 8. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes and shave off all his hairs and bathe himself in water, and he shall be clean, and after that he may come into the camp. So now you're proclaimed as a clean person. You shave off all your hairs. Now you're clean. You start fresh, right? You shave off everything. Your hairs or any hairs in your body, you just completely shave off. And you take bath. You're completely washed off. You're completely washed off, and you put on the new clothes and come back into the camping. After that he may come into the camp and live outside his tent 7 days. And on the seventh day he shall shave off all his hair, and his head and his beard and his eyebrows. He shall shave off all his hair, and then he shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. He shall be clean. So how long he does this? 7 days. And verse 10. And on the 8th day, now here comes the 8th day, which we're very familiar, of course. And when I asked everyone about, do you know anything about 8? Nobody cared about 8, but now you see a lot of 8. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, and 1 lamb a year old without blemish, and a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah, and fine flour mixed with oil, and 1 log of oil. And the priest who cleansed him shall set the man who is to be cleansed and these things before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall take 1 of the male lamb and offer it for the guilt offering along with the log of oil, and wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. And he shall kill the lamb in the place where they killed the sin offering and the burnt offering, and the place of the sanctuary. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the priest and is most holy. So they go through this, the offerings that we learned, right? The sin offering, and they go through the grain offering, they go through the guilt offering. So they give all the offerings, which represent the Jesus Christ. He paid for all this, right? The priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest shall put it on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand, and dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and sprinkle some oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. And some of the oil that remains in his hand, the priest shall put on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hands, he shall put it on the heads of him who is to be cleansed. Then the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. Does this ring a bell? You probably don't remember this, but I actually mentioned we're going to come back to this, and you probably don't remember what I said. Let's go back. Leviticus chapter 8. Leviticus chapter 8. Chapter 8 is about consecration of Aaron and his sons, which is the priest. So let's see what they go through. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying to take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garment, and the anointing oil, and bull of the sin offering, and 2 rams of the basket of unleavened bread, and assemble all the congregations at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Moses did as the Lord commanded him. And the congregation was assembled at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Moses said to the congregation, This is the thing that the Lord has commanded to be done. And Moses brought Aaron and his sons, and washed them with water. And he put the coat on him, and tied a sash around his waist, and clothed him with the robe, and put the ephod on him, and tied the skillfully woven band of the ephod around him, binding it to him and the band. And he placed the breastpiece on him, and in the breastpiece he put on the Urim and the Thummim. And he set the turban on his head. On the turban in front he sets the golden plate, the holy crown, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it, and consecrated them, and sprinkled some of it, and the altar 7 times, and anointed the altar and all the utensils, and the basin and its stands, to consecrate them. And he poured of the anointing on Aaron's head, anointed him to consecrate him. And Moses brought Aaron's sons, and clothed them, and the coat, and tied sashes around their waist, and bound caps on them, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then he brought the bull of the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons had their hands on the head of the bull of the sin offering, and he killed it. And Moses took the blood, and with his finger put it on the horns of the altar around it, and purified the altar, and poured out the blood at the base of the altar, and consecrated it to make atonement for it. And he took all the fat and that was on the entrails and long lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidney and their fat. And Moses burned them on the altar, but the bull and its skins and its flesh, and during he burned up with the fire outside the camp, the Lord commanded Moses. Then he presented the ram of the burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram, and he killed it. And Moses threw the blood against the side of the altar. He cut the ram into pieces, and Moses burned the head and the pieces and the fat. He washed the entrails and the legs with water, and Moses burned the whole ram on the altar. It was a burnt offering with a pleasing aroma, the food offering for the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then he presented the other ram, the ram of ordination, and Aaron and his son laid their hands on the head of the ram, and killed it. And Moses took some of its blood, and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then he presented Aaron's sons, and Moses put some of the blood on the lobe, on their right ear, and on the thumb of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet. And Moses threw the blood against the side of the altar. Then he took the fat and the fat trails, and all the fat that was on the entrails, and the long lobe of the liver, and 2 kidneys with their fat, and right thigh. And out of the basket of unleavened bread that was before the Lord he took 1 unleavened loaf, and 1 loaf of bread with oil, and 1 waffle, and placed them on the piece of fat and on the right thigh. And he put all these in the hands of Aaron and in the hands of his sons, and waved them as a wave offering before the Lord. And then Moses took them from their hands and burned them on the altar with the burnt offering. This was the ordination offering with pleasing aroma, food offering to the Lord. And Moses took the breast and waved for a wave offering before the Lord. It was Moses' portion of the ram of ordinations, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses took some of the anointing oil and the blood that was on the altar, and sprinkled it on Aaron's and his garment, and also on his sons and his garment, So he consecrated Aaron and his garment, and his son and his son's garment with them. And Moses said to Aaron and his sons, boil the flesh of the flesh of the entrance of the tent of meeting, and there eat it, and the bread that is in the basket of ordination offering, as I commanded, saying, that Aaron and his son shall eat it. And the remains of the flesh and the bread you shall burn up with fire, and you shall not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days, until the days of the ordination is completed. For it will take 7 days of ordained you, as has been done today. The Lord has commanded to be done. Make atonement for you. At the entrance of the tent of meeting you shall remain day, night for 7 days, performing what the Lord has charged, so that you do not die. For so I have been commanded. And Aaron and his son did all the things that the Lord has commanded by Moses. Chapter 9. On the 8th day, the Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elder of Israel, and he said to Aaron, take for yourself a bull cow for the sin offering, and a ram for the burnt offering, for both without blemish, and offer them before the Lord. So, now they stayed out for 7 days. On 8th day, now they finally performing as a true priest. Before this 7th day, they were the one who was being ordained, and they were the one who's actually giving all this a sin offering, burnt offering, all the offerings for themselves. But while they were going through this ordination, when they killed the ram, what did they do? They put the blood on their earlobe, right thumb, and the big toe, right? They put the blood over it. Now, going back to Leviticus chapter 14 again. What do? Wait a second. Isn't that similar to what the priest had gone through? And who are these people? Wait a second. The priest is the most holy person. Right? The priest is the most holy person. Why do you do the same thing that this most holy person go through when they gone through the ordination? And who are these people getting the same process? Leprosies. Who are they? Separated. They're like nobody treat them right. They're unclean. Sinners. No one associate with them because they're so filthy, dirty. They're like cursed. And God is telling priest, do this to this leprosy. And imagine, who is doing this? Priest. Imagine, as they are doing this, what are they thinking? Wait a second. This is the same process that I have gone through. We only do this to the priest. We don't do it to others. We do it to the priest, the most holy one. Why are they going through the same process that I've gone through? You get the message? When you compare the side by side, the priest ordination versus this the process that the leprosies go through, they're like exactly same. Right? It's more though. There's more to it. When the priest go through the ordination, they put the blood over their earlobe, their thumb, the big toe. They put the blood over it, right? Now, for the leprosies, they do the same thing. They put the blood over their earlobe, their right finger, and then and the big toe. On top of that, they do something more. And then they put oil. They put oil. Priest didn't go through this process. They don't put the oil on their earlobe or their right finger or their big toe. No, they don't go through that. But the leprosy, they're doing more than just blood. Not only put the blood over their earlobe and right finger and a big toe, but they put oils too. Imagine, who's doing this? Priest. And he goes like, wait a second. God didn't tell me to do this when I go through the ordination. How come this leprosy is being treated much more holier than me? Why is he being put the oils on his earlobe, which I didn't do? Why do they get the same treatment or more? And then after they're done, what do they do with the oil? What do they do? Like, put all over it. Completely cover with oil. You get the picture? So who's the leprosy? Ugly, monstrous looking sinner. Completely, deformed. Scary looking. But he's treating the leprosy much higher, better than the priest. Restoring this leprosy. This is an amazing love that God pours to the sinner. This is not acceptable. Why to this leprosy? Nobody gets this treatment. No other disease gets this type of treatment. Just the leprosies. When they're restored, they're completely cleansed after that. On the 8th day, you come back to the camp. When I didn't understand about the story, I was just complaining. I said, oh my God, like, why do I have to read this? Like, this is crap. But when I understood it, I was just like so touched about his love. How he treats me. How he calls me my loved one. Who am I? Am I worthy to be treated that way? People don't come to me. People don't talk to me. I'm an unclean one. I have to shout, Tameh, Tameh. I'm so lonely. I have nobody around me. But you're restoring me. You're restoring me. Through your blood, through your death. And this is undescribable grace that I received. Now you clearly see Jesus' love, his death, his resurrections, his salvation. Everything is in there. If you read carefully, you would understand. But even if you read this one, we didn't catch this. We didn't care about, like, well, who cares? Like, okay, birds get killed. All right, who cares? No. He's treating this leprosy as the most holy one. But imagine, the fingers that cut off, nose that I lost, will that get restored if I go through this? My finger's not coming back. My toes are not coming back. The shape doesn't change. I'm ugly as I was when I was a leprosy. Nothing has changed. It is no longer, nothing more is actually going to harm me. It doesn't change anymore. But whatever I lost, it's gone. My fingers, my toes, my nose, and all the stuff that was in my face or my skins, still the same. It doesn't get restored. What does that tell you? Just because we are healed, just because He called me to be Holy One, does not change that I'm a sinner. I still have the same shape as a sinner. I'm no different than I was a sinner. But He calls me. You're clean. After we are saved, are we continue to sin? Yes, we do. Nothing changed in me. I'm still the same person as I was before I was saved. That's why still I sin. I still lie. I still do think about bad things. And all these things are coming up because I'm not the one who's righteous. I'm a still sinner. He put me the clothes of Jesus Christ, and He calls me righteous one. He calls me righteous one, not I am a righteous one. Because of the Jesus Christ, I am called to be righteous. I'm still ugly as it was before. This is who I am. But He calls me, I love you. You're my son. And then verse 21, but if, verse 19, I'm sorry. The priest shall offer the sin offering to make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. And afterward he shall kill the burnt offering, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and grain offering and altar, though the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. So I'm not the one who claims that I'm a clean, but the priest claims that I'm clean. But if he is poor, so I'm poor, I can't bring all this expensive, the animal, because I've been living outside the camp. I don't have any money. I'm very poor. So if he's poor, cannot afford so much, then he shall take one male lamb for a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, and the tenth of an apple, and the fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and a long of oil. Also 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, whichever he can afford. The one shall be a sin offering, and the other burnt offering. And on the 8th day he shall bring them for his cleansing to the priest, to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. And the priest shall take the lamb of guilt offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. And he shall kill the lamb of the guilt offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and a thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his left hand, and shall sprinkle with the right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand, and 7 times before the Lord. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the right thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, and the place where the blood of the guilt offering was put, and the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hands, he shall put it on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. And he shall offer the turtle doves and a pigeon, and whichever he can afford, one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, along with the grain offering. And the priest shall make atonement before the Lord for him. He is being cleansed. This is the law for him, in whom is the case of a leprous disease, who cannot afford the offering for his cleansing. So, God does not care about what you bring. If you can't afford, bring cheap birds. So what does he show? I want to forgive you. I want to cleanse you so that you could be restored. Where is this leprosy in now? He's in where? Sanctuary, tabernacle, which he's not supposed to be there. He's unclean, but he's in the tabernacle now. Now you get the idea. Now you understand why it touched me so much. When I truly understood this message, I was totally overwhelmed. I was just like totally overwhelmed. Like I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. Like, oh my God. Well, hopefully when you read again some days, that hopefully it touches your heart as well. And his love, why he treated me better than the priest. He's actually lifting me up. I'm not worthy. I'm the dirtiest person. I'm the sickest person. I'm a cursed person. Why me, Lord? Why are you lifting me up? For what? His love endures. His grace overflows. I mean, without him, I'd never be cleansed. It's only you, Lord, through your blood, through your cross, your resurrection, raise me up. So hopefully his love will touch your heart as well. Any question? Did you get this idea when you're reading? Well, correct. Yeah. So, I mean, you have to, like I mentioned, you have to put yourself in lepers' shoes, that, their pain, their despair, their loneliness, all this, like, undescribable feelings, that you're completely isolated from the entire world. You're condemned, you're cursed, from that, you know, that life that you've been living. And complete different, the light came upon you. Like, you just, like, from where I was, and what happened here? Why am I in the sanctuary here? Why am I in this, like, tabernacle that I'm not even close to be here, but I'm there? So that's why he spends so much in this chapter 13 and 14 to describe, you are my loved one. I care for you. And he's showing and describing as detailed as possible who we are and how he's treating us, and bring it back to the life. That is the gospel. Imagine. From where I was as a leper, now who I came to be is night and day different. And would you be happy that you no longer live the life that you used to live, in loneliness and all the pain that you had? You don't want to go back there. That's the life you don't want. So we received a new life. My old self is gone. Throw it in the bag. It's gone. I'm living new life because of you. And if we put ourselves in their shoes, amazement and enjoyment and happiness that I would have in my heart would be undescribable. So, I hope you get that message. No one has any question? So, next time, just read chapter 8 and chapter 14 again and kind of compare between the two. Then you'll see, side by side, what priests had gone through versus what the leopards gone through. So you can see those. Okay, if you don't have any question, we conclude today's lessons. And next Saturday, we don't have Bible sharing. Next Saturday, I won't be here. I'll be out of country. So we'll do it after I come back. So that'll be 22nd. All right? All right. So, who wants to volunteer to pray for us?